Somalia's national elections have been mired in delays, criticism, and outright hostility recently. The mandate of the legislature expired at the end of 2020. The president's mandate ran out in February. After the May 27th agreement that seemed to save the polls, voting was to begin July 26th. The presidential balloting was set for October 10th. The timetable is a mess. Critics say the upper house balloting hasn't been free and fair. When the lower house polls finally start, many expect them to be marred by corruption. Joining us again today, Omar Mahmoud of the International Crisis Group will try and explain what has happened and how Somalia can change its political future.
Anytime you're in this indirect electoral cycle, this is what we saw in the previous ones, that there's multiple different steps at which manipulation can happen, and that money becomes a big part of that in terms of the votes. Now, it's not to say that money is the deciding factor. I think it's a factor, and we've seen candidates that have put forth a lot of money and wind up not actually getting those votes, not getting elected. But it is definitely a factor of these types of electoral cycles. The corruption level is quite high.
Many have said the upper house elections haven't been free and fair, with state leaders handpicking the new legislators.
The environment has become so polarizing and so divisive that it's raised the stakes a bit for this sort of election. And so I think that's why you've already seen in the upper house elections compared to the last round. I don't even think we can call these, we obviously can't call them elections. You can't even really call them selections this time. I would just call them appointments.
Some have made suggestions to fix the lower house process, but controversy still looms.
The lower house is obviously more complex. It involves, a lot of very localized dealings at the sub-clan level. But previous lower house elections, we also saw a lot of money being involved. So I wouldn't expect, those aspects to decline.
In Hirshabelle, upper house voting was suspended after one race caused a shouting match that couldn't be settled, even after cameras were turned off.
I think it speaks a bit to the nature of an indirect election, meaning that those who want to manipulate within an indirect election actually find it quite much easier. There's multiple different levers and multiple different ways to do it. So, I think in what we've also seen over time is actually people kind of learn from the previous processes and learn, okay, what worked and didn't work in 2016-17, for example, then we can apply, that a little bit differently in 2021.
It would appear that truly credible elections will have to wait for another electoral cycle.
I think that's part of the issue. If we start moving towards elections that have some sort of more direct elements or kind of open up the process a little bit, hopefully you can moderate some of those elements. And so, I think no one really wanted this sort of election again. Well, I guess some people did, but, there was a lot of resistance to it. I think it'll be hard to do another sort of narrow indirect election again in the future.
Will national elections finish in 2021?
The lower house has already been pushed back and won't really be done ideally until the end of November, but we all know that there's always going to be some other issues that pop up through that. So I would actually be looking more realistically to early next year.
ADN TV would like to again thank Omar Mahmoud for helping us better understand Somalia's unique election situation. We will speak to him again tomorrow about the international community's recent behavior toward Somalia. ADN TV will continue to report on political and electoral developments in Somalia.